So my name is Edith Velasco. I am in my fourth year at Oregon State University studying human development and family sciences, as well as education with a specialization in dual language education. And then my study abroad program was a program called Semester at Sea. So we didn't have one specific destination. We were able to go to multiple countries.
I'm Madison Munn. I graduated from Whitman College in 2015, and I did a year-long stay through the Associated Kyoto program. So I spent 2 semesters at Doshisha University in Kyoto, Japan.
I'm not currently a student, but I was a student at Western Oregon University during my undergrad years. And it was during that time that I got to study abroad in Barcelona, Spain. And I was at the time a business major and a Spanish minor.
And I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Openlander, and I am the Open Campus Coordinator in Central Oregon. And yeah, I've just been really excited about College Talk Tuesdays, and we've been trying to come up with some fun topics. So again, I appreciate everyone that's here, and thank you for coming. And we'll move on and have Christina introduce herself.
So I did Semester at Sea, fall term of 2018. So in September, it's going to be 2 years. And it was definitely an experience of a lifetime. I'll go into a little bit of the logistics of it, but if you have any questions, just type them in the chat. So some of the financial logistics, the tuition for just the room and board were depending on the kind of room. If you wanted a double, triple, single, from anywhere from $26,000 to $32,000. I had to meet with a lot of financial aid advisors, call their financial aid people. There were also visas that I had to pay for beforehand. So I went to China, Japan, and Ghana, and I had to pay for those visas beforehand, as well as India. And then later we got group visas to Myanmar and to South Africa, I think it was. And then I also had to take into consideration the flights to get there. So we disembarked from Germany. So I had to fly to Germany, as well as some vaccines and medications that I needed. So $200 for a yellow fever vaccine that wasn't covered with my insurance because it's not necessarily here, but I needed it for Ghana. And then I also needed tetanus and typhoid shot, malaria pills for about 60 of them because we were in high malaria areas. And then OSU gives you like this travel package if you go with them and tell them you're studying abroad, and they have like pills for stomach aches, seasickness medicine, and different things depending on what you're doing. And then for educational things, obviously I didn't want to get behind in my studies, so I had to work with my advisors and see what classes I could take. The program that I was with, I think they have 60 courses that kind of vary depending on what program it is. Some that are consistent are like oceanography, business courses, and things like that. I was able to take 2 of my general science courses. I took oceanography, geology, a world literature course, and then they make you take a cultural sensitivity class, which was able to count as my backcourt cultural diversity. So they kind of briefed us about countries and country norms before we were able to actually go into the country, which I found really useful. And then I had to register through OSU as well before going abroad and pay their $300 OSU Go fee to kind of hold my place within the university. So it was a lot of money. Overall, it ended up being about $40,000. So I chose the cheapest room. They had a lot of programs like a Pell Grant match, a need-based grant, alumni scholarships. And so in parentheses is what I received from those specific ones. And then there are other scholarships, larger scholarships, more competitive, things like that, that I didn't receive, but were also available to other students. And then for OSU, they also have a lot of scholarship opportunities for study abroad specifically, as well as through their portal. So I got $2,500 for the College of Public Health that I just had them push it all towards fall term, outside scholarships, FAFSA, the OSU Abroad Scholarship, and then I'm actually a Ford Scholar, so they were able to pay most of the remaining costs. I took out a $5,000 loan, but for the experience that I got, it was really nothing. But yeah, I had friends that got $40,000 worth of loans, and they said it was still worth the experience. I don't know if I would take out that much big of a loan, but other people did. So after I figured out how I was going to pay for this project, this little adventure of mine, there were other things I had to stress about. So my living situation, I didn't want to pay rent when I wasn't going to be there. So right there is my sister. And I actually made an agreement with her that I was going to pay her $150 a month, which is more or less what I would pay for a storage. And then when I came back in January, I was going to live with her. And so that's what we did. Dental checkups, because you're supposed to get one every 6 months. And so I had to do that beforehand. I had to go to the doctor to make sure I was healthy for my visas, job security. So I had to talk with my employers and see if I was still had a job when I got back. And then I had to make time for my loved ones because I wasn't going to see them for 4 months, and there was no way for them to see me. It's not like they're going to go fly to China. And then packing was another thing that I stressed out a lot about because I wasn't going to be staying in one place. So I had to look what the temperature was like in a certain country at a certain time. So like in China, it was super duper cold, like practically snowing, below freezing. And so I had to pack my big jackets and stuff. But we also went to like a tropical island like Mauritius and Hawaii. So I had to take swimsuits as well. So I had to condense my clothes and take layers and stuff. So I didn't overpack because these luggages had to fit in these small little cabins. As well as snacks. I did not pack as much snacks as I would have liked. There was a few days there that I was really struggling and didn't have like any hot Cheetos, or I ran out of salsa. I took like 3 packs of salsa and I ran out. So for future references, I know how much I use in 4 months, but that isn't something necessarily that I tracked otherwise. But I also had to get toiletries, toothpaste, shampoo, things like that. And so then I had to think about in-country travel. So the ship pretty much, we swam, well, like kind of floated around, and then we would park or dock in a certain country, and they would give us anywhere from 4 to 6 days in the country. And in those 4 to 6 days, you can pretty much do whatever you want, come to the ship whenever you want, leave whenever you want, and you just have to be back on at dock time, or else the ship would leave you, supposedly. That's what they always said. I don't know if they actually left people, but that's what they said. And so my options were independent travel, or I can go through semester at sea. So some of the pros and cons. So through semester at sea was super expensive. So like to go see the Taj Mahal, I paid less than $250 when the program through semester at sea was either $1,000 or $2,200. Independent travel, I can travel with my friends, but through semester at sea, they had safety in numbers and they had guides and professionals and things like that. Independent travel, we also have more freedom and flexibility. So if I wanted to be like, oh, I'm just going to cancel and stay an extra night. But through semester at sea, they had refunded programs for unexpected cancellations. So when we were arriving to China, there was like a big crane in the way and we couldn't dock. So all of our plans got pushed back like 20 hours because we had to dock later. And so I did lose a couple trains that I had pre-purchased, that my friends who went through semester at sea didn't have to pay for those unexpected cancellations. Independent travel, people were also more around like the culture, as opposed to through SAS, it's more like protected and sheltered, and you're with the people that are from the ship and things like that. Accommodations for early departures and late returns. So there were the times, like for example, in the China when the crane was there, they let the people who were on semester at sea programs leave early because they were already running late and whatnot. And so that causes a lot less stress for the people. But for independent travel, there's also a lot of resilience and personal growth. Before going on this trip, if you would have told me that I was going to get like a whole country, my plans were going to shift, I would have freaked out, but it was fine. I chose independent travel because it was more affordable, and that was the money that I had. There was no extra funds coming later or anything. So before going to Germany, I wanted to make this a trip of a lifetime. So I went to New York City for the first time with my mileage points on my credit card. Then I went to Iceland and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in London. And then I finally made it to Germany. Direct flights and what it cost me to get there jumping around was pretty much the same. So I was like, might as well take off a couple more things off the bucket list. So on the right is when I was in Iceland at waterfalls. There was waterfalls at every corner. And then here I was in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. It was amazing. So now the fun, life-changing parts. So pre-voyage, I was in 4 countries within a week. Semester at sea goes to 4 continents and 11 different countries, 9 if you don't count the one that you dock in or the US. But everyone counted that because it sounds better to say you went to 11 than 9. In less than 3 months, I went to 3 different countries, Mexico, Canada. I went from 3 different countries to 15 countries. So I had gone to Mexico, where I'm currently at, and Canada. I went like 2 weeks before I left on my trip because I was like, how is it possible that I haven't been to Canada? I'm gonna go on the other side of the world. So I did make a trip to Vancouver. And then I also went to go see 2 Modern World Wonders, which is amazing. There were some countries I didn't even know existed until I went there. And then there were some beautiful places that I didn't know existed until I went there. So on the picture on the right, I went to Black Sand Beach in Iceland, which is in the Game of Thrones. I don't know if any of you watched the Game of Thrones, but I sent a picture to my boss and she's like, that's where Game of Thrones is. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I had no idea, but it was really cool. And so this is from London, the bridge that's always in a lot of movies, another waterfall in Iceland, the Harry Potter world, and then Blue Lagoon in Iceland as well. Those are the ones that I did before going on my trip. The rest of these pictures and that. Yeah. I went to Barcelona, Spain, and I went to Valencia, Spain. I'm a big Barcelona soccer fan, so this was like a dream come true. And the Sagrada Familia, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, but I'm sure Jose will talk about it enough in his presentation. And he was there for a lot longer than I was. I was there for 2 days in Barcelona and 2 days in Valencia. Absolutely beautiful. And then in Ghana, I did a homestay in a little village about 2 hours away from the main city that we stopped in. It's called Takoradi. And so the top left picture, we went to a school and these kids were like so excited and singing in English. And I was really like, it was a lot of culture shock because I didn't know that they spoke English. 2, it was interesting to see their school system and the dynamic that they were in. So they didn't have enough teachers to be in every classroom because they're in a super rural area. So they had like 7 classrooms and 4 teachers, and they kind of rotated around. And you would walk into a classroom with no teachers and the students were absolutely silent. It was mind-blowing. Like if a teacher were to walk into one of my classes, even now in college, and nobody was in there, like people would be talking or whatever, but no, they were super respectful. On the top right is a slave castle that I went to. So they kind of do like tours through them so they can see the conditions that people were in, and it was absolutely horrifying. They didn't have any bathrooms. They had like a little row on the floor that the water would pass through like once a month when it would rain or whatever. So no formal bathrooms and things like that. So that was hard to see, but it was interesting to see it myself and not just be told about it. And then on the bottom, we played soccer with one of their local teams, which is really fun and really cool. Yeah. I also crossed the equator, not only the equator, but the prime meridian at the same time. So if you cross the equator, you're considered a shellback. And then if you cross them both, you're considered an emerald shellback. I'm not sure why. That's like pirate sea lingo or something like that is what they told me. And we had to kiss a fish and they put slime on our head and it was a whole thing. But yeah, that was fun and very few people do that. So that was cool. Then we got to South Africa. South Africa is absolutely beautiful. The picture on the bottom is on top of Tabletop Mountain. So it's a mountain that's completely flat on the top. We were gonna hike up on it, but we went on a wine tour the morning before, so we were not capable of climbing up this super steep mountain. I also went, the top right picture is where the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean meet. So it was kind of cool because one of them is cold and the other one is warm, so they weren't mixing. There was just like a line of difference between the waters, which you can kind of see like back there, but that's where they meet. And then I also went parachuting, which was really fun, off of Tabletop Mountain and landed on the beach, which was great. I also saw penguins and went snorkeling and saw a shark. It was absolutely terrifying. I thought it was following me. It probably wasn't, but when you see a shark, you get a little paranoid. I went to Mauritius, and that was only like a pit stop that we went to for to refuel on gas. So it wasn't an official stop, but it was beautiful, a beautiful tropical island, super warm, super sunny. I was able to meet with some of their university students, which was great. They told me about a time where their politics and such were so strict on what you can write that one of the authors that I met had to sell her books like with fruit. So she had a fruit basket, and then under she would sneak in her books, and they'd be like, "Oh, can I have the goods?" Like drug dealing, but with books. And I thought that was so crazy. But yeah, Mauritius is a tiny island outside of Madagascar. I definitely want to go again. Didn't know it existed. Absolutely beautiful, and the people were so nice. India. I went to India for 6 days. I got kicked out of their national monument. It was sad, but they didn't tell me in my cultural class that you weren't allowed to take out flags when you were in front of the Taj Mahal. Yeah, apparently they find it disrespectful to bring out flags of different nationalities or flags of like different gang affiliations is kind of what they refer to it as in front of their historical monuments, which thinking about it, it does make sense, but yeah. And so they took our phones and they were searching through it and making sure we didn't have any pictures with flags, and then they escorted us out. Aside from that, it was beautiful. That was right as we were leaving, so I had already seen it, walked up to it and everything. I also rode on an elephant, saw more waterfalls, and then on the top right, it was like a tea farm, I think is what it was, which is really cool. We stayed in little cabin-like hotels, which was fun. I also went to Myanmar or Burma, and I went to these pagodas, and it's like a little village that people just would go and worship there. It was super interesting to see. To be honest, I didn't experience this country as well as I should have. I found this Mexican restaurant, and after this, I had been like 3 months without being home, and so I went to the Mexican restaurant every single day, and I was so happy. I was there twice a day because I missed my food. And so yeah, this country was definitely kept me sane because it prevented me from severe homesickness, but it was also beautiful. I also went to Vietnam. I visited a small town outside of Ho Chi Minh City, and then in Ho Chi Minh City, which is where we docked, I was able to visit the Vietnam U.S. War Museum. And so viewing those sorts of things from the other people's side is so different and so interesting how their perspective was. I also got some coffee from there because apparently it's some of the best coffee. I don't drink coffee, so I gave it to my mom, but she really liked it. I went to the beach. Yeah, did some cool stuff in Vietnam. And then I went to China. I went to the Great Wall of China. I went down a slide that they had there that Michelle Obama also went down, which I thought was pretty cool. And then on the right, I went to go see the warriors that they had statues of, that one of their like emperors or rulers at the time wanted to be protected even when he was dead. So he had people make all these statues, and they're super lifelike. Like not a single one is the same. They have different facial expressions. They have facial hair. They have arm hair. They're super duper detailed, even after being in the ground for a long time. And then I went to Japan. I did go to Kyoto, Japan, but I was only there for a few days. I went to go see a lot of things. I went to Nara and saw the deer as well. I went to the Universal Studios in Japan. But yeah, Kyoto was definitely beautiful. I didn't go to Tokyo because they said that it was just like any other big city, and Kyoto was their capital for 100 years, so it was super cultured, and that's why I chose to stay there locally instead of going up to Tokyo where most people went. And then finally, I went to Hawaii. Hawaii was beautiful. It was actually a field trip for one of my classes. We had to go snorkeling in Hanauma Bay, and it was 25% of my class score was to go snorkeling in Hawaii. So
I'm wondering how you fly from New York City to Iceland for $100.
So there's a program in Iceland that they want tourists to go. So in the summertime and things like that, when they really want to increase their tourism, I went at the end of August. So it's a pretty deadish travel season. And so it was super cheap and it was only one way. So
Was it hard balancing classes with all your travel?
no, because a lot of the professors know that all of our interest is on the travel and a lot of theirs were too. So we had like open book, open note, midterms and finals, and we had group projects and things like that. And we also didn't have access to internet, so they didn't require a lot of rigorous things
Oh,
because we did a lot of
gotcha.
the studying on the ship and there's no internet
Yeah.
there.
So mine, I'll kind of more generally talk about sort of the concept of studying abroad, because the program I did was called Associated Kyoto Program. And there's only, I think this may have changed in the last 7 years, but at the time there were only about a dozen like small private schools that actually did this particular program. So it's the details are less transferable, but the general concept of study abroad still applies. So I've actually made 3 separate trips to Japan. So this was my very first study abroad experience. This picture back in 2008, I did a summer program through 4-H out of Crook County, and I stayed for 2 months with 2 different host families. So this was my first host sisters for my first family, and then these were my host sister and her younger sister on the left photo for my second family. So I've had a lot of experience living with like local community, which is a very like doing a homestay study abroad experience is a very different experience from say staying in a dorm or an apartment or a ship cabin. So these 2 are from 2008. And then I went back and did my college 2-semester Associated Kyoto program, which was based in Kyoto in 2013 to 2014. So this is my host family for that visit. You can see we did a traditional, I can't remember if it was New Year's or a holiday called Setsubun, but they do this bamboo, they cut a large slice of bamboo and flow noodles down it. And you grab it out of the noodles, out of the bamboo, out of the water. So through my college study abroad program, AKP, I also got to meet a lot of friends and I had more classmates compared to my high school experience. And so here's just some pictures with my friend groups. The right one was a few members of our class were given the opportunity to be in a kimono fashion show. They wanted to highlight how Japanese fashion could be traditional. So I, in the middle, was wearing a traditional hakama style kimono, and my 2 classmates on the left and right were in more like modern stylings of kimonos. They wanted to show that it's accessible to non-Japanese people and there's not just one right way to wear it. So you get a lot of unique experiences like that when you're staying in a place for a long time. So I've got just a sampler of photos showing kind of different things to think about when you're deciding what kind of program you want to do and where you want to take it. This is showing, these are all photos that I took during my time in Kyoto and some in Tokyo late when I went back to work after college, but showing the traditional culture. Here's I think this one on the left is actually from Tokyo, not Kyoto. The one on the right is from Kyoto. The more modern culture. The one on the left is a holographic concert, or is a concert featuring a holographic lead singer. The right is Odaiba, which is a man-made island with a shopping center on it. And one of the things I really enjoy about Japan is you get these really dramatic mixes of, people like to say like old and new meat in Japan. So you've got this kind of traditional cuisine with like more sort of French influenced presentation. You have, this is Osaka Castle with a LED illumination for Christmas time. This was the train station near my Kyoto host family's home that used these like this kind of dragon pearl design fountain and these lights that were patterned with kimono fabric. There another kind of take on it, depending on the focus on your program. You can do a lot of modern history in addition to the ancient history. So these are from Hiroshima. We went to the Peace Museum, which is focused on awareness for the atomic bombs that were dropped in Japan. So the left is a watch that stopped at the time the bomb went off, and the building at the right it's now called like the A-bomb dome. It used to be their like civil hall, community center hall, and now that's one of the few buildings that was left standing, so it stands as a monument. And they really, it like was said before about, you know, hearing about the Vietnam War in Vietnam, it's very interesting learning about things you think you know from your own country from a different point of view. The Hiroshima Peace Museum, they really didn't push it as like a look at what America did. They were really focusing on like, look at why nuclear weapons are bad and no one should have them. So it was a very, very different angle that they were taking. Obviously the nature in Japan is very famous, and a lot of places throughout the world you can enjoy, you know, tropical scuba diving, mountain climbing. Japan, one of my favorites is the seasonal flowers. So we've got cherry blossoms and the autumn leaves in November. The area where I lived in Kyoto was called Arashiyama, and it was really famous for its fall colors. It got really crowded in November. So it's kind of my quick talking points are, when you're deciding where you want to go, things to think about are what kind of experience you're looking for. Something like semester at sea is great for if you are interested in marine biology or the tourism industry or any kind of like natural sciences, or maybe you want to, you know, learn more about sailing or the kind of globe-trotting culture and like things you need to know about that. If you're looking for something that is really outdoor focused, or if you're looking for a program where you can do volunteer work and really connect with local communities, if you're looking for something that's really tied to your like vocational or your studies, if you're interested in art history, unless you're specifically studying East Asian art, you would probably, like classical art history, you'd want to go to Rome or to Venice. If you're looking for so different kinds of studies may kind of naturally feed into different places, that different study abroad programs. If you don't want to do a study abroad program that's specifically related to your course of study, I think I forgot to mention earlier, my degree was actually in sociology, not East Asian studies, which was the most popular major program for people who did the Associated Kyoto program. To make a full year-long study abroad program work with a non-East Asian studies degree, I had to plan ahead really carefully, make sure that I would get the right classes that transferred. I had to be planning from basically when I started so that I could make sure that I could get the specific requirements out of the way. I didn't leave anything until my junior year and then figure, okay, I need 3 more science credits. Too bad, you can't take 3 science classes on this program, therefore you can't do the program. So I had to plan ahead to make sure I could get my science credits out of the way before and after doing this program. If you're, you know, doing an art history course in Italy, or if you're doing a marine biology course at semester at sea, that's probably going to be less of a concern. But those are things you really need to think about when you're deciding if and when you want to do a study abroad program and which program is going to be right for you. For me, part of the reason I chose Whitman College was because I knew I wanted to do a Japanese study abroad program. So even while I was researching for colleges, I was looking into the requirements for study abroad, the course transfers that were available, and what specific things I would need to do and what order I would need to do them in to make sure that I could make this all work and not be set back a semester or a year in my studies. Another advice for that is specifically because Whitman College is one of the ones that is partnered with the Associated Kyoto program, it wasn't as much of an issue. But if, for example, you're doing semester at sea and you're then having to worry about transferring credits from Colorado University, you have to make sure to, if someone says, yeah, this will totally count for your gen ed or your, you know, foreign language studies or whatever, make sure you have that documented so that you don't think that you have it all set up and then you come back and they say that, oh, I don't know who told you that, but no, that doesn't work. So, and that also applies for things like travel documents, your contact information. You need to know ahead of time what kinds of visas you need. Are you finding your own accommodations? Are you staying with a host family? Because then you'll need to be in contact with them and figure out what their rules are. If you need, and I'm afraid I already said, vaccines, or if you need to exchange currency before you leave, or if you need to figure out your phone plan, there's a lot of logistics that you have to keep very organized. And the sooner you start thinking ahead about those, the less likely you'll get stuck somewhere where you have no money and you don't know how to contact your study abroad advisor. So those are kind of my points. I was trying to keep it sort of quick and focused on mine.
So I'll go ahead and start here. I studied abroad in Barcelona, Spain, and I did this in 2012. So I didn't include a lot of numbers about how much it cost and how I financed it, because I'm sure that those numbers have now changed since that was almost 8 years ago. But I will say that at the time, the travel for that trip was actually about $6,500. And that's because I wasn't there for a full semester. I was actually only there for a month. It's actually a total of 6 weeks, but my program was 4.5 weeks long. And so it was a little bit more affordable than other programs that are semester long or even year long. But that's something that I had always dreamt about. And so even just for 1 month, I thought that was sufficient to get that out of my system. And I also needed to plan around my academic school year because I was an RA. And so I depended on that to cover my housing and my meal plan and all that kind of stuff while I was in college. So I needed to make sure that I had something that would work both with my degree, and my other responsibilities while in college. So I found this program in Barcelona, Spain, through what I think was called the Barcelona International College. But before choosing this one, I had also looked at some programs in Costa Rica, Ecuador, and Prague. And that's because all of them had business courses that I could use towards my major. And 3 of them had also Spanish. I ended up choosing Barcelona because it had the most flexibility calendar-wise for what I needed, because their program started in July and I got out of school in June. So that worked out really well. So I wanted to just cover a couple different aspects about study abroad that I think are the main drivers for me, at least as someone who wanted to travel. And one of them was getting immersed in the culture of the country that I was going to be in. So I actually had the option of choosing to live in dorms with other students, most of them from America. But the other option was to live with the host family. And that's a mixed bag because your experience is going to depend a lot on the family that you stay with. And I was very fortunate to stay with this very, very humble, very welcoming family who had been taking in international students for a very long time. And so while I was there, I actually got to meet another student from Memphis, 2 students from India, and then right at the very tail end of my trip, 2 students from England. And all the family there, they had 2 children, and they were Catalan, so they were native to that part of Spain, and they have their own very unique culture. It's a little different to other parts of Spain. So they spoke Catalan, Spanish, and the kids were actually learning English as well. So it was interesting to hear them practice and connect with them on that. The other really cool aspect of studying abroad is, at least for me, because I was in this program that took in students from all around the world, I got to make friends from all around the world. In the college that I was in, there were students from Brazil, from Australia, from other parts of Europe, and many different parts of the US. There were some from Mexico, and what other countries? There were just several people from different countries, and it was just really cool to all come together and learn about each other's cultures and traditions and just have fun and go on these outings together. So that made the experience a whole lot better because from the get-go, I had friends. I had established friendships with people, and so I got to experience this new place with all these different people. And I would take classes with a lot of them. We would get together after class and do some homework together. So it really felt like there was a sense of community, which was really important for me while I was there. So this is the college that I was in, the Barcelona International College. And it was actually a small building. So I say small, it was a 3-story building, but it was kind of narrow. So a lot of the buildings in Barcelona are kind of built up, and they're kind of smushed with a bunch of other buildings all around them. And there's so much going on, but our building was about 3 floors. I would say about 12 classrooms. And so throughout the day, they'd have like each classroom would have like 3 different classes. So there wasn't a whole lot to choose from, but I was able to choose the classes that I needed that would go towards my major, so that those credits would eventually transfer back to my college, which was Western Oregon University. And the international college that I was in was a part of this grouping from this, what you see here, it says N4X. They have a couple of different programs within them. Yeah, and so it was just part of the city. So like the college I was in, as soon as I got out, I could go out and explore the city, which was always so fun. The culinary aspect of traveling abroad is always so interesting because even though you might miss the food you had at home, it's also a really great time to experiment with different foods. I never thought I liked squid, and just having been there and trying it, I actually ended up really liking it. And just trying different foods that I normally wouldn't eat. I ended up really liking a lot of the foods there, and I kind of miss some of them because I can't find them here. The cultural events. So outside of the classes that I took, I really loved just exploring the city and going sightseeing, going to the museums and exploring different aspects of the local culture. And so here I just displayed a couple images about some of the events and places I went and things I saw. On the top left is, it was from a festival, and it wasn't actually in Barcelona. It was just south of Barcelona in Valencia. They had the Festival de los Monstruos y Cabezudos, which translates to the Festival of the Monsters and the Big Head Beasts, I think. And so it's just a tradition that they have every year. They have this big festival, and people will put together these like giant beast looking things with like gladiators, and they come in playing music, and everyone's just cheering and like look like, I don't know exactly where that tradition originates, but it was a really cool, totally different type of experience that I hadn't seen before. In the lower left, you see some of the traditional Catalan attire that is worn, or that was worn more traditionally in that part of Spain. And then in the middle, you see the castellers, which is like human castles, which is a big tradition. And I got to, I actually stumbled upon this happening in one of the streets where there was 2 groups that were practicing their castellers for their festivals. And so they had sort of like a local competition while they were practicing. So it was really cool to see that. I got to see local music performers that would walk the streets, and at night, every now and then you'd see different like fireworks shows and stuff, people attracting all the tourists. Yeah, so it was a really great experience to see all these different things that I wouldn't normally see here at home. The sightseeing, just the architecture of Europe is so different from the ancient architecture that you'd see with the castles to the modern architecture that is present there. There's so much art, so there's a lot of rich history in art and famous artists, and so getting to see a lot of those things in person was really cool. And that's pretty much all I had to share in images, but I do want to share a little bit more about studying abroad. So gearing up to this this experience, I did have to take almost a full year in advance for planning, because I needed to find that program that fit my timing, that fit my budget, that fit the other aspects that I was looking for. So I actually didn't choose Prague because I was hoping for a place with the beach, something tropical. So when I thought about Costa Rica and Ecuador, that's one of the big things that I was attracted to. Barcelona was kind of a compromise because they have their own beaches. It's not as tropical, but it was still really nice to be there with their own man-made beaches. And just the fact that they had the courses that I needed to go towards my majors. Because it was in the summer, I saw it as getting ahead because those were credits that then I wouldn't have to worry about during the regular school year. So I was able to actually lighten up my credit load after that because I was already well past being on track to graduate on time. Like I could have actually graduated early, but because I had already a commitment through my contracts for working with housing, I just lowered my credit load and my average was closer to 12 credits than it was when I first started, which was around 15 credits a term. So yeah, why would I study abroad? I think just the cultural opportunities, being able to challenge your views on how you see the world, just the way of life in Barcelona was so different to what I normally see here. Even just getting around town, being able to travel through the subways, not something I see here. You know, we're all driving our individual vehicles. Their mass transportation system there was just incredible. I could get to any part of the city within 15 minutes and it was really affordable. The lifestyle there was just a little bit more relaxed. Yeah, there's just so many different things to see and I really appreciated that experience. I feel like it helped me grow as an individual. And I will say there were times where that it was kind of tough because there was this culture shock of like, oh, I don't know what the cultural norms here are like. So I need to really pay attention to make sure I don't goof up and do something that's not socially acceptable or wrong. Although things there are a lot more free. I like just being on the beach. I wasn't aware that all their beaches were technically like nude. Anyone could be nude at any time on their beaches. There were specific nude beaches where you have to be nude, but any other beach you could be nude if you wanted to. And so that was a little bit of a shock just walking down the streets near the beach because it would tend to be older men and women that would be completely nude. So that was something I wasn't used to and it was a little different for me. But yeah, it was all a really great experience and I wouldn't change it for the world. I didn't get that much financial aid to help with it, but it was also a lot more affordable than other trips. So I was able to manage with a loan that I paid throughout the time until I ended college. And I actually was able to pay it off within 6 months of after graduating college.
I do have a question for both Maddie and Jose.
Awesome.
Do either one of you stay in contact with your host families after the experience? Have you been in touch with them?
Yeah, so my very first host family, the one that was in the very first photo, I've lost touch with them, unfortunately. The email address that we used to use to contact each other doesn't work anymore, and unfortunately, I have no way of contacting them anymore. But my second host family, I still keep in touch with her. When I went back, she was the one that I stayed with for one of the months when I was in high school. When I went back in college, while I was visiting Tokyo from Kyoto, I did visit her and her family again. And then, yeah, my mom also came to visit them. And when after I graduated college, I went back to Japan and lived in Tokyo for 2 years. While I was there, I visited her a few times. I visited my host parents. So I've stayed in touch with them a lot, which has been really nice. She also, she did a study abroad at UW, and she came down to visit us during her spring break or early summer or something.
Yeah, same here. I think when I got back, it was a little bit more frequent, our communication. Now it's down to about maybe once a year that we hear from each other. I really appreciate it from her, and she really likes to give me like life updates, I guess, of her family. And it's usually during the holiday seasons. So I think she like includes me with all the other students that have stayed at her place. So it's really nice just to hear from them and see how things are going.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, is there anything else, Jose, that you want to wrap up with?
I was just looking back through the questions here, and I think just one I think we pretty much covered everything.
Yeah.
The only one is the challenges, any particular
Oh, right.
challenges that you might have faced that you would point out to future students who want to study abroad.
I think
Uh,
had to go, so it's just Jose and Maddie right now. Just so you know, Edith had to get off early.
Okay. Thank you.
So for mine, like Jose kind of mentioned, living with a host family is definitely kind of a mixed bag. There are some things you wouldn't be able to do or experience otherwise. There are some things that you can't do or experience if you're with a host family because of, you know, you're limited to their schedule, or, you know, the program may be oriented a certain way. So, you know, it's something to be aware of. Also, something else to be aware of is how kind of rigorous your program is. I know that in general, study abroad programs tend to be a little lighter on the academics because they really want to push the experience the local culture, you know, see the world kind of side of things. My program, because Doshisha is a rather prestigious university in Kyoto, and the American colleges and universities that were partnered with it are also fairly like small, like expensive tuition private schools. They wanted to make sure that they were like holding the standard that people were paying a lot of money for tuition for. Because I forgot to mention, the way that it worked in this particular program is I just kept paying my normal college tuition, and that was transferred to cover all the fees of the program. So it wasn't any different for me than how I was normally, my scholarships and everything still carried over. But that meant that I had to spend more time in my room researching and writing essays than some people would, depending on their program. So again, that may or may not work. That's just something to be aware of. And if you have certain expectations for what your program is going to look like, factor that in when you're deciding your program.
Yeah, I would echo that, and also say that for me, I knew that my time there was relatively short, considering that my program itself was only 4 weeks, even though I had a week prior and a week after. So I was very ambitious and like trying to use as much time as I could to go explore and do as much as I could. I got to a certain point where I kind of hit a wall. I even got sick, and it was the strangest sickness ever because I was literally sick for like 24 hours. But I got really, really sick. I got a fever, and then the next day I was back to myself. But I think I hit that point because I wasn't sleeping very well. I was going to school, coming back home, having a meal, and then just going out with friends and seeing different parts of the city, and just going out and exploring. And I was coming home pretty late too. So I was pretty fortunate in the sense that my host family was very flexible, that they would say, here's your keys, just let us know if you're gonna be here for dinner. If not, have fun, we'll see you tomorrow. So it was very flexible, but at the same time, I was not managing my time in a very healthy way because I wasn't sleeping very much. And that hit me about halfway through my my trip there. And then I was having a hard time focusing on my homework. And so towards the end, we had some big final papers to do. And I was really struggling. I think I got those all done like super last minute, but I got them done. And so there's like all these different things that are trying to get your attention, and all these different wonderful things you could do. But you kind of have to remember you're also there for school, and you do have to give that the time and respect that it merits, because that's why you're there. Is you're still expected to put some time and effort into your projects, to demonstrate that you're learning something, and that there's also a certain level of rigor that you have to meet. So you can't just like write a paper and meet the page requirement or whatever and be done, because they are going to grade the content. So I would say that. And then the other challenge I had was money, just being able to make sure I had access to to funds. I wasn't going to carry a bunch of cash with me. So I needed to make sure that I had an international bank account that I could use my debit card or a credit card to use an ATM and withdraw cash in euros, or just a way to pay for any emergency expenses. So that took a little bit of creativity, but it all worked out.
So actually funny, just a point about that is I've had some opposite troubles. That another thing that'll depend a lot depending on which country you're in. For example, when I've traveled in Iceland, it's been called a plastic economy. You almost never have to touch cash. Everything's with card. In Japan, they don't use a lot of credit unless they're like larger stores. They expect you to be able to pay everything in cash. And even small stores, because there's a fairly low crime rate, even like little food stands could break the equivalent of $100 bill, but they probably won't be able to take a credit card. And so, it's becoming more common, but that's another thing to kind of be aware of, is that there were a few times when I had run out of cash and the like ATM vestibules were closed because it happened to be a national holiday, and I was kind of scrounging for money until I had to wait 2 days so I could get back into the ATMs and withdraw cash, because that's how it worked in Japan.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, does anyone have anything else? We better wrap up. Natalie, did you have a good time listening to all these amazing stories?
Yeah, it was very interesting. I took a lot of notes about
Oh,
each
cool.
and every one of them. So
Awesome.
yeah, I
And you
enjoyed it
have
all very much.
any questions that you can think of, or are you good?
No, I think all of it just got answered. Yeah.
Perfect.
Natalie,
appreciate you coming.
if you start college this fall, do you know like where to even start looking for study abroad?
I do know that my high school counselors have kind of like these little talks that they'll do just to keep everyone on track on what they're trying to do when they hit college. So I guess I could talk to my counselor and see if I could get something started on that, because that definitely sounds like something very interesting to do.
Yeah, the reason I mention it is because I don't think we really talked about this very much, but every college tends to have a place or a person that manages study abroad. So it's just a matter of figuring out who that is or where that is, and getting connected with them, because that's basically the start of everything, and meeting with them just to talk about what sort of opportunities there are, what sort of financial aid, what sort of programs for different degrees they have. That's where you want to get started, and just collect as much information as you can to then make a decision on when, where, how much it's going to be, and will it fit with your needs and wants. But yeah, that's pretty much how you get started.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed Edith's, where she talked about the whole scholarships and the tuition. So I definitely took a lot of notes on all of that so I could keep it for reference.
Yeah, and there's always the people that manage those programs. They're the right people to talk to about that, because they will break it all down for you and let you know what options you have for financial aid.
Right, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And a lot of times if you are interested in a certain university or college, if you go to their site and just Google study abroad programs, there's a lot of information, and I'll just show you that. Let's see if I can find it. I thought I pulled it up. Maybe not. Let's see. No, maybe not. Anyway, I thought I had it pulled up, but I'm not finding it right now. But yeah, there's usually full pages dedicated to study abroad. Like I know Oregon State says something about 70 countries and 100 and some programs, or 200 and some programs. So there's just a lot of information on the different college websites or university websites. So anyway, thank you so much, everyone. We'll wrap it up unless somebody has anything real quick before we go. I appreciate you coming again very much. Thank you, Maddie and Jose, for presenting. Thank you, Natalie, for coming. And we loved hearing about Edith's stuff as well. So thank you, thank you. Next week, we're doing trade schools, apprenticeships, certificate programs, and things along those lines.